They train harder than anyone else. They sweat, they grind, they bleed, and yet, when the spotlight shines, the world laughs. CrossFit athletes are the underdogs of the sports world, the ones mocked, doubted, and dismissed. But behind every barbell drop and every sweat-soaked rep, there's a story that no one talks about, and today, we're pulling the curtain back. If you've ever stepped into a CrossFit box, you know the sound. The metallic clang of plates hitting the ground. The short burst of breath that echo through a warehouse-stern gym. The chalk dust floating like smoke after a battle. This is not just fitness, this is obsession. But for CrossFit athletes, being obsessed comes with a cost that almost nobody outside the community truly understands. Here's the truth. It sucks to be a CrossFit athlete, not because of the training itself. They love that. They live for the WODs, the workout of the day. They thrive on the community spirit. But when you peel back the hype, the Instagram highlights, the sweaty slow-motion reels, you see something darker. You see injuries stacking up. You see mental health crumbling. You see careers ending before they ever really begin, and that's the paradox of CrossFit. It looks like empowerment on the outside, but on the inside, it's sacrifice at a level most sports never demand. Let's talk about the grind. Training for CrossFit isn't like training for basketball, football, or track. It's not one skill. It's all the skills: Olympic lifting, gymnastics, endurance, power, agility, strength, precision. Imagine being told you have to be a marathoner, a sprinter, a power lifter, and a gymnast all in one body. That's the CrossFit reality, and it pushes people past the brink. CrossFit athletes often train twice a day, 6 days a week. We're talking 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours of work. Squats until your knees scream. Handstand walks until your shoulders seize. Deadlifts that make your spine question your life choices. Then, when you think it's done, the coach yells again, and here's the kicker: in like mainstream sports, there isn't the same financial reward waiting at the end. The NFL has million-dollar contracts. The NBA has shoe deals. Even tennis players can walk away with millions in endorsements. CrossFit athletes, most of them can't even pay rent from competing. Unless you're in the top 1%, the so-called elite of the elite. You're funding your own pain for your own travel, your own supplements, your own recovery. You're working a 9 to 5 just to afford the sport that's breaking your body. And even those at the top, the Matt Frasers, the Tia Claire Tumis, the Justin Medeiros, they're outliers. They're living legends. But for every champion, there are thousands of athletes grinding in the shadows, pushing themselves to the edge with no spotlight, no sponsorship, and no safety net. This is where the mental toll creeps in. Imagine dedicating your entire life to a sport that the mainstream either ridicules or ignores. On social media, CrossFit athletes are called reckless, unsafe, injury-prone. Every time a fail video goes viral, someone dropping a barbell on their back, collapsing during a lift, the comments explode. That's why CrossFit is a joke. But what those commenters don't see is the hours of precision behind that failed lift, the discipline it took to even attempt it, the absolute obsession with chasing perfection, only to be mocked when imperfection inevitably shows up. This constant push and pull, the love of the grind versus the hate from the outside world that eats away at CrossFit athletes. Sports burnout isn't just a buzzword for them, it's real. Their bodies are on fire, but their minds are sometimes even worse. Anxiety before competitions, depression when injuries force them out, self-doubt when the algorithm buries their progress under endless highlight reels of someone else's PR. And speaking of the algorithm, let's talk about social media. In 2025, CrossFit athletes are living into worlds: the physical box and the digital feed. In one world, they're training until their hands tear open, bleeding on the bar. In the other, they're expected to look flawless, to smile, to post, to prove that CrossFit is fun, sexy, viral. It's not enough to grind anymore. You've got to trend. For some athletes, that pressure is heavier than the barbell itself. They're competing not just for medals, but for likes, comments, brand deals. And when the views don't come in, when the followers don't grow, that's when the self-questioning starts. Am I even good enough? Am I wasting my life? This dual reality is what makes being a CrossFit athlete so brutal. The sport itself is hard enough, but the social media layer, that's the real beast. And it's one most outsiders don't even see. Now let's talk about injuries. Because you can't discuss CrossFit without addressing the elephant in the room: torn shoulders, ruptured knees, herniated discs, shin splints, stress fractures. This is not exaggeration. CrossFit athletes get hurt, and they get hurt often. And it's not just physical pain, it's identity shattering. Imagine training for a year for the Open only to tear your rotator cuff 2 weeks before. Imagine building your life around the games, only to blow out your ACL during qualifiers. In most sports, injuries are devastating but expected. In CrossFit, they can be catastrophic, because the margin between peak performance and total collapse is razor thin. The same intensity that makes you great is the intensity that can break you. And yet here's the twist: most CrossFit athletes will tell you they love it. They wouldn't trade the grind for anything. Why? Because of community. Walk into a CrossFit box anywhere in the world, and you'll see something rare. Strangers cheering each other on, beginners getting high fives from elites, people finishing dead last being celebrated louder than the ones finishing first. That spirit, the raw, unfiltered camaraderie, is what keeps them going. It's the glue, it's the drug. But even community has its shadow side. That same collective energy can create pressure. If everyone in the box is pushing past their limits, you feel like you have to do the same. No one wants to be the one who quits. No one wants to be the one who looks weak. And so, you push, you grind, you break, This paradox, the love and the pain, the passion and the suffering, is why being a CrossFit athlete sucks in ways people don't understand. It's not just a sport, it's a lifestyle, it's an identity, and sometimes it feels like it's eating you alive. In 2025, with AI and training programs, with recovery apps that track your sleep, with nutrition apps that log every calorie, you'd think the burden would be lighter. But in truth, the pressure is heavier than ever. Because now, there's no excuse. You can't say you didn't know your macros. You can't say you didn't track your recovery. Every mistake feels like it's your fault. The machines are optimizing you, and yet, you still feel broken. And here's the thing that no one likes to admit. Most CrossFit athletes will never make it. Not to the games. Not to the podium. Not even to the live stream of qualifiers. They're grinding for personal bests that no one else will ever see. They're chasing validation in a sport that rarely gives it back. And yet, they keep showing up every single day. Because somewhere between the sweat and the steel, they find meaning. They live for pride. They sweat for progress. But sometimes, all they get in return is silence, no applause, no recognition, just another aching joint, another night of broken sleep, another morning where the barbell feels heavier than usual, not because of weight plates, but because of doubt. Behind the hashtags, behind the sponsorship tags, behind the motivational speeches that sound rehearsed for Instagram, there's a different kind of story, a darker one. The story of the athlete who puts everything into the sport, only to realize the sport might never love them back. CrossFit isn't just training, it's a lifestyle cult. That's how outsiders describe it. People mock the lingo, the endless acronyms, the WODs, the AMRAPs. But those inside know, it's not about showing off. It's about surviving the grind. It's about proving to yourself and to the community that you can endure more pain than most people would even attempt. But here's the twist: the culture that celebrates pushing past limits is the same culture that hides the cracks. The back injuries, the collapsed knees, the surgeries at age 29. Think about that. 29 years old and your body already feels like it's 55, not because of genetics, but because every day you thought one more rep was a badge of honor. In a world obsessed with optimization, where AI tracks your sleep cycles, where apps spit out the perfect recovery strategy, CrossFit athletes are still caught in the old school mentality. No excuses, no shortcuts, no mercy, and the truth, that mindset is killing them slowly. Scroll TikTok, you'll see CrossFit fail compilations, lifters collapsing, athletes crying mid-WOD. People laugh, they share, they comment. Imagine doing all that for no prize money. But here's the thing those commenters don't see for the athlete. It's never about the money. It's about belonging. It's about proving worth. It's about building an identity in a world that scrolls past you unless you bleed for attention, and bleeding is almost guaranteed. Torn hands from pull-ups, blood running down shins from box jumps gone wrong, calluses ripped raw. It's not glamorous, but in the CrossFit gym, those scars are badges. And that's part of why it sucks. Because the pain is normalized. There's no HR department for overtraining. There's no whistle blown when you're doing thrusters with an injured back. Instead, people cheer, they film, they repost with fire emojis. The suffering becomes content. And when your suffering becomes content, where's the line between athlete and entertainer? Between passion and exploitation? That's the existential question so many CrossFit athletes don't even realize they're answering. Every day, let's zoom out. The mental health revolution in pro sports: Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, Michael Phelps athletes have been stepping forward, saying, we are not machines. But in the CrossFit world, the conversation is barely a whisper, because the fear of being seen as weak is louder than the pain itself. Think about that. These are human beings with lungs on fire, hearts pounding out of their chest, vision going blur, yet the biggest fear isn't collapsing, it's being labeled as soft. That's why burnout in CrossFit is one of the most hidden epidemics in sports. It's not just physical, it's emotional. The athlete walks into the gym knowing that their best might never be enough, that someone else on the leaderboard will always post a faster time, that their PR today will be yesterday's news tomorrow. And yet, they return, because walking away feels like betrayal, not just to themselves but to the community that made them who they are. But community has a shadow side, because with community comes pressure. Post your workout, share your scores, prove you're still in the grind. Social media has turned CrossFit into a competition even outside the box. If you don't post, people assume you're slacking. If you scale down the workout, people assume you're weak. And this pressure isn't coming from sponsors or coaches, it's coming from friends, from peers, from people you actually care about. That's why it cuts deeper. And here's the cruelest irony: the CrossFit Games, the pinnacle of the sport, showcase the 0.01%, the fittest of the fit. They look like superheroes. But the average CrossFit athlete? They're breaking themselves chasing a dream that isn't even real for them. They're following a standard that was never meant to be theirs. They'll never step on that games floor, yet they keep grinding. As a failure to get there makes them less worthy. That's not fitness, that's torment. And so the cycle continues, aches ignored, pain silenced, relationships strained, bank accounts drained, all for a sport that outsiders mock, that insiders glorify, and that leaves many athletes stuck in a paradox, proud of their strength, ashamed of their fragility. But maybe the hardest truth of all is this: CrossFit athletes aren't just fighting barbells. They're fighting time, because the body doesn't care about motivation. The joints don't care about hashtags, the spine doesn't care about community. At some point, it all breaks down. And when it does, the gym moves on without you. The community celebrates the next athlete. The leaderboard refreshes. and you're left alone, with memories of a grind that gave you identity and took everything else in return. So, why does it really suck to be a CrossFit athlete? Because it's a life lived at extremes, a constant negotiation between glory and collapse, a sport that rewards suffering but punishes honesty, a culture that builds resilience but hides vulnerability. Because in the end, being strong isn't enough. You have to be unbreakable. And no human being truly is. But maybe, just maybe, the conversation is changing slowly. Whispers of athlete mental health. Talk about smarter recovery. Even experiments with AI-driven training to prevent burnout. The future might hold better tools, better balance, a chance for athletes to thrive without destroying themselves in the process. But until that balance becomes the norm, the grind will keep eating athletes alive. They train harder than anyone. They endure more than most. They sacrifice everything for a sport that's half love, half punishment. And that's the truth no highlight reel will ever show. So now, let me ask you this. Do you admire CrossFit athletes more? Or do you fear for them? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button if you've ever rooted for the underdog who pushes past pain. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow, we've got another story from the hidden side of sports that you won't believe.